Hello everyone, this is Maureen and welcome to my crochet story where I share with you two things that I love, teaching and crochet. I am so happy that you are here to be with me today because today starts the first video in my Basic Stitch series. So if you are new to crochet and would like to learn how to crochet, you are in the right place because Basic Stitch series is all about learning the foundation of crocheting. Now, today I'm going to talk to you just briefly about some supplies that I would like for you to have before we get to the first lesson. Now, all of these supplies can be found very readily at any Walmart. They can also be found at Joann's, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, or even possibly in your own local yarn shop in your own hometown. So let's see what it is that you're going to need. Obviously, we're going to need a hook. Now, I'm going to suggest for beginners that you start out with an aluminum hook. And there are two companies out there that make all aluminum hooks. The one that I am holding is made by Susan Bates. It's what we call an inline. All right, it means that it's from this little launch pad here. It is straight all the way up through the hook to the top, and you'll see that the hook part here itself is still in line with the rest of the body. That's what we call an inline hook. Now, I use this particular brand because that's what I learned on from my grandma. It's also very lightweight, which is nice for beginners. It's also inexpensive. You can buy your hooks in singles, or you can buy them in a nice little starter pack. Boyle is another aluminum hook company out there. The only difference between theirs and the Bates is that theirs has a little bit more rounded curve to it. Many people prefer it just because they seem to think that it's smoother going into the stitches. I technically, personally, don't find any difference, but I just prefer the Susan Bates. You use whichever one you like. But folks, these are less than $2 at Walmart, so don't go out there right away and start buying a bunch of fancy hooks because you're going to find that not all of them are going to feel comfortable. So if you start out with the lightweight aluminum, get your feel, learn how that you're going to work the hook with the yarn, then you can start branching out and spending a little bit more money on some of the others. The next thing obviously is we're going to need some yarn. Now, I purchased this yarn the other day while I was in Michael's. It is their house brand. It's called Craft Smart. It's very inexpensive, but it's a nice quality, squishy, 100% acrylic yarn. And you're going to find in the Basic Stitch series that that's what we're going to be using is 100% acrylic yarn and a medium 4 weight yarn. I hope I don't have that upside down. No, medium 4 weight yarn. I also suggest that with your yarn when you're looking, that you buy one that is light in color. You don't want to start out with a black or a dark navy or a purple, the darker shades. You want something that's light so that you can see your stitches as you're learning to crochet. Now, as I said, Craft Smart is Michael's home in-house brand. Joann has a very nice acrylic in-house brand. It's called Big Twist. Hobby Lobby has a nice in-house brand. It's called I Love This Yarn. And at Walmart, they carry most of the time Red Heart. You can get it in a couple of different sizes. You can get it in their regular size. You can get it in a jumbo, or you can get it in a super saver. Now, the difference between those sizes is just the amount of yarn that's in each skein. This particular skein that I bought from Michael's has 350 yards in it. But for these first few projects, I'm going to stay to find a skein that has between 250 to 300 yards or meters in it if you're on the metric system, because we can use this yarn or this bulk of yarn to make several different little projects. And remember, in my intro I told you that when we start the basic stitch series, not only will I be showing you a stitch each week, but I will also be giving you a project to practice the new stitch that you're learning, and to also end up with something to show for your practice. So we've covered the hook and we've covered the yarn. One other thing I would like for you to purchase is a good pair of scissors. Now, you don't have to spend $20, $30 on scissors. That's not what I mean. I want you to have a good pair of scissors that is only for your yarn. Don't let anybody use it for cutting cardboard or tape or papers or maybe their nose hairs. No, 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 no. This is strictly for your yarn. And the reason being is that you start cutting with any other types of material, you're going to slowly over time develop little nicks in here, and you're not going to have that nice clean cut when you go to cut your yarn. And we want that so that we can thread that yarn in to our little tapestry needles. All right, when we get ready to finish off our project by threading in our tails. Now this is called a tapestry needle. This one is plastic. You can buy 3 or 4 of them in a package for about $1. They also come in metal, different sizes. You can get them in a little tube. Those are a little bit more expensive, but both of them will work just fine. So, you're going to need a hook. Oh, I forgot to mention. I would like for you to start out with a size J or 6mm crochet hook. Now, this will create a nice stitch where you can see what you're doing. It's not too big where you're likely to get your thread tangled up, and it's not so small where you can't see your stitches. So size J hook, medium weight for acrylic yarn, about 300 yards or 300 meters, and we can get started. So in here in just a moment, you're going to see a little intermission sign pop up. That will give you time to get your materials, and I can get my materials, and gives me a chance to turn the camera around so that I can show you what we're going to learn today. Be back in just a minute. All right, so we are back with our crochet hook and our thread. Now, when you buy a skein of yarn, you're going to have what we call a pull-through thread. Now, this is not always easy to find. Sometimes you have to dig around in here just a little bit to find it. In fact, folks, when I was trying to find mine, I pulled out a big old wad, and rather than trying to unravel it and get it cleaned up, I just went ahead and snipped it off. So you'll notice that my skein is a little bit less in volume than it was before. Now, there's always also an outside thread that you can use if you would prefer, but I'm not an outside thread puller, so I just normally tuck mine back up underneath the label here so that it doesn't get tangled up in what I'm working with. Now, many people will take their skein, pull the label off, and just go ahead and ball it up. You can do that as well. That's how my daughter crochets. She doesn't like to mess with the skein that much. So once you have found the end or the direction you're going to want to pull your yarn, whether it's through from the inside or using the outside wrap, we need to figure out how are we going to get this yarn onto our hook. Now, when I was first learning, my grandma told me, lay your thread down on the table, take your hook, point it towards you, and just tie a knot around your hook. Now, you don't want it real tight because you are going to want to be able to move that hook through that first loop there that you've made. But there's nothing wrong with this. This is a good, nice, solid knot. The thread is not going to come off, so you're good to go. Now, like I said, there is nothing wrong with tying your yarn on that way. but I do find it sometimes a little, takes a little bit too much of my time, especially if I have to go back in and unknot it. So I'm going to show you a technique that I use. I lay a nice long tail here across the back side of my hand. I take the top of the thread and loop it through my first two or around my first two fingers, and making an X around the bottom or on the back side. And that way when I roll it over, I have these nice two loops here parallel to each other. Take my hook and I turn it downward where the hook is on the bottom facing down, go under the first loop, over to the second loop, pull it through, turn my hands over, and just pull and make my little knot. Now yes, you have a big loop here, but drop your tail, which is your short piece, use your feeder side here, and just pull it tight. And then we're ready to go. Now the nice thing about knotting your thread onto your hook this way is that if for some reason you need to start all the way over, and I mean completely fresh, when you get down to this last knot, it just comes on off. Okay, so let's try that again. I'll leave myself a nice long tail, cross over the thread on my first two fingers, come around to the front, do that again. My two parallel lines, take my hook, go under the first, catch the back, flip over, pull the thread off of my fingers, drop my tail, pull my feeder yarn, and I'm ready to go. Next thing I want to talk to you about is how are you going to hold your hook. There are two different styles of holding out there. People that know how to knit generally like to continue that knitting motion that they have going here and using what we crocheters call the knife hold, where you're holding it like a knife, and all you have to do is just twist and pull your yarn through to make your stitches. Now guys, this is about as good as it gets for me if I try to be a knife holder. I can't do any of my other stitches good like that, but that's about as good as it gets for me. I am what we call a pencil holder. I hold my hook like a pencil. Again, this is the way I was taught. It's easier for me. And again, it just comes down to what is comfortable. I can control the tension here. I can control how much of the yarn I loop through. Well, and I can have my nice consistent stitches there. So I would suggest that you take a few minutes, or maybe a little longer if you need to. Consider, do you want to be a knife holder? Do you want to be a pencil holder? Now, I do not do any knife holding tutorials, but there are many people out there that are knife holders, and you can jump over onto their videos. I'll leave a few of them down in my description box for you to go and see how they hold, how they work the yarn and the crochet hooks together in that kind of style. Okay, so now that we've got the yarn on the hook and we've talked about how we're going to hold the hook, the next thing is we have to talk about is how are we going to control the tension of the yarn as we're working it with our hook. Now again, there are different ways of holding your yarn. Some people just hold and go. And don't ask me how this works, but I've seen many of them do this. I mean, they can make this work like crazy. And it's obvious that Maureen can't do that. Another style that I've seen is where they use these back through 3 fingers to hold the yarn and wrap it around this little finger. And then they use their thumb here and then control it that way. The only thing for me with doing this is that I don't feel like I have the control here that I need, and you see I just pulled that stitch there. It's just hard for me to control my stitches. I prefer a threading technique that's kind of like a sewing machine, where you go through loops and rounds and everything. So I loop my thread around the back side of my little pinky here, and then over the top of my middle finger, and then back around my front finger here. You'll have 3 loops across the top of your hand, and then 3 loops in the back. Around the pinky, across the top, and around here, and then I can control, as I said, the tension of my stitches. And if you'll notice, I am not moving my fingers at all on my left hand. It's just sliding or gliding through the loops that I've created to keep my thread at a tension here that's consistent as I'm grabbing it and pulling it and making nice consistent stitches. Now I know that's a lot here for the beginning, but I suggest that you take a moment before you move on with me to chaining and doing single crochets. See which one works for you, see which one feels best. Or if you're ready, you can just go on. I will move slowly so that we get the hang of everything that's going on. All right, so as I said in the beginning, we are going to start with making chains, which is what I was doing a moment ago as I was showing you the different ways for holding your knife and for feeding to get the tension right. So I'm going to start with a chain. And we make a chain by simply pushing the yarn back and forth on our hook, wrapping around the hook point here, turning it over and pulling it through. There is your first chain. See them right there? Do it again. Push through, hook, pull through. Push through, hook your yarn, and pull it through. There we've made 3 chains. See the little V's here that we're making? Each one of those V's is a chain. Let's do some more. Pull through, oops, pull through, wrap around, pull through. Pull through, wrap around, and pull through. Push through, wrap around, pull through. Now you'll notice that I am holding my chains here as I go through. I might do 2 at a time, but I don't go much further than that. Go through, around, and through. Through, around, and through. Through, around, and through. You'll notice that I'm using these fingers here to roll my hook. I go through, I roll the hook, and pull it through. Now you can also use your wrist to do this if you don't like that much action with your fingers. I just think over time I developed the rolling technique with mine. So push through, roll it around, pull it through. Around, grab your yarn, pull it through. Grab your yarn, pull it through. Grab your yarn, pull it through. And you'll see that you should have some very nice consistent chains. Here's your little V stitches here. Each one of those is a chain. Okay, so I want you to continue practicing for a few minutes or longer if you want to. My grandson, when we first introduced him to crocheting, he would sit down on the couch or in the recliner and just go to town, just making chains and making chains and making chains. Oop, I got a little bit of hair there wrapped up in my yarn. That's my hair, folks, not the cats or the dogs. Through, around, and through. Through, around, and through. Here we just keep it going. So again, you practice that for just a few more minutes. I'm going to pull some more thread out. And look at that. This is a nice teaching moment here because sometimes this happens as well. If you're just real careful, because sometimes the yarn itself gets caught on itself and will knot up a little bit. I always say just follow the loops, and most times it will break on loose for you. See what's going on here. Yeah, just got a little twisted there. I normally come back to where it came out and just pull it. There we go. So as I said, just keep practicing until you feel comfortable, think that you've got the hang of it, and come back. And I'll see you in just a minute. Okay, now that you've had a few moments to practice making your chains, what I want you to do is to pull up a loop. All right, just pull it up, take your hook out, and I'm going to tell you about a term that we use quite frequently in crocheting. It's called frogging. And frogging is when you have to take your stitches out. So that's what I want you to do. All those nice lovely chains that you just made, I want you to frog. See a little frog hopping there? And I want you to take them all out. Now don't get mad at me like some of my students would right now. Ms. Youngblood, that's not funny. And you're right, it's not funny, but look at that. All of those chains are out, including the knot. Now the reason why I wanted you to pull them all out is because we're going to start with a project here in just a moment. So in starting with the project, some of us may have practiced using 30 chains, 50 chains, 60 chains, maybe didn't even know how many chains we had. But I want a specific number of chains now. So we're going to start over. Going to get ready to put my yarn on my hook. So remember, we start cross over on the back, loop around to the front, do that again, cross over from the back, loop around to the front, come under, go over, turn our hand around, and pull the yarn off our fingers. Drop that tail and then pull tight. Now we're going to start our chains again this time. This time I want you to chain, let's see, let's chain 30 chains. All right, that should be easy to count while we're chaining. So remember, this loop here on my hook does not count as anything. It is just to have the yarn on my hook. So here is our first chain, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. Now I want to make sure that that's 30 chains. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my thread, pull up a loop, put my hook down, and come back and start from the beginning. Now remember, in the very beginning I showed you on your chains how they make nice little V's. Well, we're going to count those sets of V's to make sure we have 30 chains. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. So I have 30 chains on my hook. Now I need to add one more chain so that I can turn and go back the other direction and start with my single crochets. So I'm going to add one more chain. And you're going to find that as you're crocheting and using other people's patterns, that depending on what the first stitch is in your next row will determine the number of chains that you have to use in order to get the height for that particular stitch. So since we're doing a single crochet, we're just going to use one chain to turn. So I've added my chain and I'm going to go into the second chain, one second chain from the hook. Now to do a double crochet, we're going to go into that top loop. You'll see that you have a top loop and a bottom loop. So we're going to go into that top loop, stick our hook in, and just like when we were chaining, grab the yarn, pull it through. Now I have 2 loops on my hook, but I only want one. So I'm going to do the same process again. I'm going to wrap the yarn around my hook, pull it through both loops, and I have just made my first single crochet. Now you might not be able to tell it here very much, but after we've gotten about 4, 5, 6 of them on our chain length here, you'll start seeing what they look like. They're little bitty fellas, but they're useful. Going into the next chain, now you see all these humps here? Those are the top loops of each one of your chains, and that's where you're going to be feeding into. So I'm going to go into the top of this next chain, pull up a loop, next top loop, going in, wrapping around, pulling up, going around, coming through. So here I have 1, 2, 3 chains that I've already made. Do it again. Next loop here, in, wrap around, pull it up, wrap around, pull through. Now don't worry about this little spacing right here where it looks like it pulls up, because as you start making more single crochets, it'll all settle down just like these here. So again, we go in, go around, come up, there's 2, go around. Now can you see your little single crochets here? Let's do some more. Go in the top loop, go around, pull up, pull through. Now as you're going into the next loop, pulling it up, you want to make sure that these 2 loops here are the same height. You don't want to get real big, because then you'll be pulling this, but you want them the same height before you wrap around and pull through to get down to just one again. Here we go. Go in, around, and through again. So I want you to finish all the way down until you get to the last 2 chains, making your single crochets. All right, I'm down to the last 2 chains. I'm going to finish off with single crochets again. End of the top, pull up a loop, around and through, and into this very last one, which happens to be the first chain that we put on our hook. Again, go through the top loop, around, and we're finished. Now it's alright if it curls up on you a little bit, it will, but it'll flatten out once we start making more rows. Okay, and that's what your first row of single crochets should look like. Now, we're going to take just a moment and we're going to pull our thread up again, and we're going to start back here at the other end, and we're going to count to make sure that we have 30 single crochets. So we're going to come back down here. Now your single crochets are your little V stitches here. Just like on our chains, single crochets make V stitches as well. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. And that's what I wanted. I had 30 chains. I chained 1 to make my turn, and then I made 30 single crochets. So put your hook back into your loop there. We're going to chain 1, and we're going to turn. Now remember, this chain 1 does not count as anything on our hook. We're going to go right back in now to the top of this single crochet and make another row of single crochets. Now, when we're working into the single crochet, I want you to turn it on the side here so you can see the top. See the top here? Just like on your single crochets, you've got V's. You've got a back loop and you've got a front loop. This front loop is facing you. This back loop is, of course, facing away from you. So for the purpose of this tutorial and us practicing with single crochets, we're going to go through both loops, the front and the back loops of the single crochet to make another one. So just like before, we go through, pull it up, go through, and 1. Go through those 2. All right, should have both of them right there. Go through, pick them both up, pull up, around, and through. There's our second one. Next stitch, make sure that you've gone through both loops. You should see them there separated. Go through, come around, up, and just like before, we want to keep our stitches. When we pull this up, we want our loops to be the same height so that our stitches are all the same and consistent. Okay, so in, pull through, pull up, pull through, go in those 2, pull up, turn around, come through, in, pull through, go around, come through, and continue all the way to the end. And then hold up on the last 2 stitches for me, please. Right, we're down to our last 2 stitches. So again, in, make sure you got the top 2 loops from your previous single crochet. Pull up, go around, come through, and there's your last stitch. Go in. Where's my other? Where are you, bee? There she is. Sometimes you have to dig around a little bit to find that last one. Around and through. All right, there we go. Pull it up. Let's start back again and count all of our stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. All right, let's make another row. Chain 1, turn your work, okay? And again, this chain 1 does not count as anything, all right? So we're going to go into the first single crochet, going under both loops there, pull up, pull through again. Next one, going through both, pull it up, loop around, just like you've been doing. In, pull around, round and through. Go in, pull up, around and through. Okay. Now again, I want you to finish all the way this time to the end of the row. All right, I'm coming down to my last 2 stitches. So I'll go in, round and through, and my last stitch, pull her up, okay? Chain 1 and pull through. Now I'm going to pull this up and talk to you about this just a moment. Feel that textile that you're working, that you're making. Because that's what this is. We're taking yarn and a hook, we're making loops that create a textile that we can use for garments, for towels, for household accessories, just anything that we want. Now the single crochet, when it's worked just by itself, and in each stitch or each chain that you make, creates a very dense or close stitch fabric. It also has a little bit of give to it. Now a lot of that has to do with the yarn. Some of this has to do with the stitch that we're using. Look at that. Okay. Now I want you to continue practicing making the single crochet for about 28 to 30 inches. And this is what you're going to create for yourself. You're going to create a pad that you can put in the bottom of a kitchen drawer. Now, many of you may use those spongy, sticky little pads, you know, that we can put in the bottom of our drawers or bottom of our cabinets. I've used those for a long time as well. But when I was trying to think of a project that would help you to not only practice your single crochets, but that would give you something that gave you a sense of accomplishment, I thought, why not replace those plastic things that we put in the bottom of our shelves for our cabinets and our drawers with something that we can reuse over and over again. So instead of going out and buying something that eventually we're going to pull out, throw away, and have to put in with brand new, these, whether they get spilled or, you know, the little dust bunnies that sometimes accumulate in our drawers and on our shelves, we can just pull these out. We can throw them in the washer, wash them, and dry them, and put them back in our drawers or on our shelves. The nice thing about doing this type of little project is you can use any thread, any color. You can even mix and match. Use up your scrap yarns, as you will find that you're going to have a lot of when you do projects. So I would like for you to finish this, like I said, out to 28 to 30 inches. And that's normally about the length of that's a nice size pad that you can put in most kitchen drawers. So again, we're going to put our hook back in here. We're going to go some more. I'm going to do one more row with you. I've already done my chain 1 and up. Go into that first stitch, make a single crochet. I'm not even going to tell you how to do it because you should know by now. If not, you can always rewind the video. And I will meet you down at the other end. All right, I'm coming to the end here again. And I just finished another row. Now, before I leave you, I'm going to show you how to tie off when you get finished with the number of rows that you will need. Now, a moment ago, I said you might want to extend this out about 28 to 30 inches. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't have a drawer quite that long or that deep into my cabinets, but I would say that 18 to 20 inches would be a little better than 28 to 30. But you might want to take a tape measure and measure the depth of your drawer before you stop. So when you get ready to stop your project, you're going to end your row with your last single crochet, and you're going to make one more chain, just like a chaining, like you were going to turn. But you're not going to. You're going to come along here. You're going to snip you some thread, give yourself a nice long tail, and then just pull through that chain that you just made, and then tighten down. That secures your thread and nothing will come unraveled. Okay? Now, we need to hide these tails, and that's where the tapestry needle comes in. You're going to take your tapestry needle, and if you know anything about hand sewing, you know exactly how to do this. You're going to always take my thread here and fold it over on itself and wiggle it through. Okay? And then you're going to take your thread, your needle, and you're just going to weave it in and out amongst the loops that you've made in your crochet. Now you don't want to pull too tight on that. You want it to stay nice and even. And I just come through, find me a few loops at a time. Thread my thread through. Maybe I'll go back up this way. You want it to be nice and secure and not come loose. Some folks might even twist around like this. I just like to go through loops several times to make sure I have it nice and secure. And then I will snip it off. And she's in there. She won't come out. Okay? Be sure that you always start back at the end where you left your first tail. See how nicely that pulled that big loop from our very beginning. And you don't always have to go through as many times as I do. Just enough to make sure you got a good amount of that tail stitched back through your fabric so that it doesn't come loose. And there you have it, a nice finished piece of fabric. But hopefully you will continue to practice and yours will be much bigger than mine. Now, like I said, using this particular stitch to make mats, if you will, or drawer bottoms, or even shelf bottoms, is a nice way to not only practice the stitch, but it gives you a feeling of accomplishment. And you've also made for yourself something that you can use in your home. Okay, so I like making these for just about any occasion. A lot of times I might make one if I'm having a dinner party outside. I might just whip me out a few of these just to put down on a glass top outside table to put my plates or cups or things on. There's a lot of things that you can do with the crochet, single crochet stitch, and just making squares, rectangles, long runners, just for a little bit of pop of color, protection between items that are on tabletops, just all sorts of things. So I hope that you will take the time to practice your single crochet and make a nice piece of fabric. If you like this video, I would ask that you be sure and hit the like button, and if you're not a subscriber, I would ask that you would subscribe to my channel and be sure that you hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any videos that I will post. As always, please be safe, be kind to one another, and be the light for someone in the darkness today, because you never know, it might be your light that they need to see. I love you all. Thank you for stopping by. Bye.